Hi, it's Alice from BG247, and I'm here with Kirk as we talk about 7 things in The Last of Us Part 2 that have been improved upon from the first game.
Hello.
So this goes without saying, but as we're talking about the entirety of The Last of Us Part 2, some of you may think that what we talk about is slightly spoilery. We won't be talking about any major plot points or talking about any major spoilers, but do bear in mind that we are going to be talking about the game in depth. You've played The Last of Us Part 2 a lot, haven't you now?
Yeah, I'm like nearly halfway into my second playthrough now.
That's a glowing review if you ever needed one. The Last of Us Part 2 improves upon the first one in quite a lot of different ways, but we're going to talk about 7 of those ways today. And we're going to start off with the analog stealth, which is completely different to the first game.
Yeah, in the first game, it was either you were hidden or you weren't hidden. You crouched, and obviously noise played a factor into the stealth there. Like if you knocked over something, then the enemies would hear that. But otherwise, you were just either behind cover or you weren't behind cover. Whereas with the addition of a prone button in this one, it adds more layers to the stealth. A lot of games use foliage as cover, but there's like different lengths of foliage in this. If you go prone through tall foliage, then you're almost completely hidden. You're like invisible basically. Prone in short foliage, then you're hidden at a distance, but if they get like within say 5 or 6 meters, they'll see you. And obviously cover still plays a factor in it as well. And it just makes the stealth feel more dynamic, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot more exciting and interesting to be able to hide behind cars crouched or hide in the grass like on your belly. It is a lot more exciting in the way that you can just use your environment tons more to your advantage than you were able to in the first one.
Yeah, I think the prone does add something to the shooting as well, because like I've got myself onto a roof and slithered to the edge of a roof and just aimed, and obviously there's less scope sway when you're prone, and you can take pot shots from your rifle. And then even if you do get spotted, one of the things I love is that you can just get away and re-engage stealth. You can slip through cracks in buildings and then slither on your belly through the grass to the next building and get around, and enemies will just sweep the buildings looking for you rather than like automatically knowing where you are.
Yeah, the enemies are like a lot cleverer than they were in the first one, but also Ellie's a lot more nimble than Joel ever was in the first one as well, so you can just literally get anywhere and everywhere that you can see pretty much. If it looks like you can climb on top of it, you probably can. It's just so much more dynamic.
It feels a bit Metal Gear Solid-y at times, I think, like, because even if you're not in the grass, if you're at a distance, if you're crawling on your belly, it's less likely the enemies will see you, because it's like different levels of being hidden in this rather than just on and off. I spent so much of the game just crawling around places, just crawling on my belly, terrified. It adds so much to it, and one of the other things it adds to is level design, I think, because I think you've got some footage to bring up now of the original game, but when you first come up against the human enemies in the original game, you're like dropped into this little arena with this weird waist-high cover. It's like scrap or something, I don't even know what it is, but there's like some structures that you can crouch behind. It's so obvious you're about to get in a shootout.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, you just, everywhere there's grass, everywhere there's debris, and anywhere could be a combat arena, so it keeps you on your toes as well.
Yeah, it made me absolutely terrified. I think I spent most of the playthrough in crouched with my hearing on max, and I was just like, anything can come out at me at any point. It makes you way more scared. Well, it makes me way more scared of any moment that could happen.
Yeah, and it just feels more natural as well. You've got them old game design things where, like I say, if you see cover, you're going to get in a fight. And then there's also stuff like you mentioned earlier, there's a flashback scene where you go to a museum. They litter like collectible items around, but there's also resources, right? You think, oh, I'm collecting resources, that means I'm going to get in a fight. But you don't actually get in a fight during that section.
The whole area that you're collecting those things in feels like an arena, like you said, and things around you that would imply that there might be someone lurking around the next corner. It just sets you up so much for things that aren't going to happen.
Well, that's it. It subverts expectations from like traditional game design stuff. Like even there's a workbench jump scare, right? Go on the workbench, and usually that's a safe place, but you hear these footsteps run up behind you, and then the next minute you're in a headlock, and it's like you never feel safe. And it's one of the things I love about it. It all comes from that little thing with the stealth. Is that one decision has spread out to the rest of the game.
Another thing that's greatly improved in The Last of Us Part 2 is the safes and the safe system. You can't just look at something in the world and have Ellie remember it. You have to actually figure out shit on your own.
Yeah, I love that. Like, in the first one, you just pick up a note, you didn't have to actually read it, and then they'd automatically unlock the safe. Whereas in this one, you've actually got to enter the combination. And I know it seems like such a small thing, but it makes you pay so much more attention to the world, because every little note you find could have a safe combination on it, or every whiteboard you see could have a safe combination on it, or graffiti on the wall, or anything like that. And it makes you pay attention to all the little stories that Naughty Dog's weaved into the world.
Yeah, I don't think I picked up on as much backstory as this one. I see names in one note and I recognize them in another note, and I can piece together stories that aren't even being spoken about just because I'm trying to pay attention to everything I read, which is just so much more interactive than it was in the last one. And I'm also really bad at doing the safes. Really bad at it.
I remember when you messaged me about the dog safe, because you figure out did you?
I overcomplicate things so much all the time. Like, my teachers at school were always like, "You've made this harder for yourself," and that's what I did with the safe. I was just like, I was thinking too hard about it, and I didn't need to. But yeah, I overshot the numbers all the time as well. I'm so bad at that.
I think one of the best examples of this in the new one is that area. I think it might be Seattle Day 2. It's in the lead up to you getting the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And there's this whole like sub story playing out in the environment of this like local hero whose daughter was killed by the soldiers or whatever, and he went on some revenge mission, and you find notes and like little clues about it all around. There's even this auto repair shop where he's locked people in and they've all become infected.
Yes, I missed that safe.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You're really bad at safes, aren't you?
I am. I think I've got most of them, bar that one, and I knew that one was there because you'd spoken about it, and I still missed it, just because I think I just got carried away with pushing forwards. I'm too scared to linger.
Well, that's on the first point. The game's a scary game, and
yes, it is scary. It is very scary. But yeah, I do enjoy the fact that the safes just aren't kind of mindless anymore. There's a point to them, and the point isn't just to get good loot. The point is to actually learn about what's been going on before Ellie gets there.
I think that actually takes us on to point 3 quite nicely, because point 3 is about the puzzles, right? Mm-hmm. In the first game, the puzzles were all about planks and ladders. My God, like every puzzle is like carry a plank somewhere.
Oh, when I did the live stream and I couldn't find the ladder for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I was like, it's over there. It's near the car. And you didn't know which car. And
it was quite well hidden. It was prone in the grass, to be fair.
But that was the level of puzzles in that game. It's like you can't see a ladder because it's covered in grass. Whereas in this game, a lot of the puzzles are physics based. There's one of my favorites is you're inside this like warehouse, but you're in a warehouse and there's a shutter, and there's a what do they call them in America? Like a skip.
A dumpster.
Dumpster, that's it. There's a dumpster. So that was my American. Dumpster fire. Anyway, there's a dumpster, and you've got to get it out of the shutter.
Yeah.
The shutter only half opens, and then when you let go of it, it falls. Mm-hmm. And there's a ramp inside the warehouse, and the solution is you take the dumpster to the top of the ramp. You leave it like on the ramp, so it's going to slide down. Then you pull the shutter, so the dumpster flies under the shutter, and it's just great. There's loads of little puzzles like that, isn't there?
But going back to the first point, you don't know how much noise that's going to make. You don't know if that's going to trigger something from somewhere. Or the fear in playing this game is just so much.
I think that was compounded by the fact that you've had to turn the music off for your capture, right? So
yes. I turned it back on now. I've turned it back on now. I was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I can't play this game comfortably without music.
There's a lot of optional stuff as well, isn't there? There's one building where there's just a rope inside, and you're like, okay, but it's completely optional. It's just to get some more resources. But you smash a window, and then you smash another window, like a shelter window at the top, and you throw the rope over, and you can swing around to the next room. And it's just little things like that. Again, back to the point about safes, it makes you pay more attention to the world, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot more discoverability in this world. You can see something and potentially just go into it. Like, the shops aren't always shut just because the door is locked. Like, you can most likely smash a window and get in there, and it just makes everything a little bit more exciting. So the exploration leads nicely into hubs and stuff. The hub area that you're in for quite some time with Ellie and Dina is completely new and not what we've seen in the first one whatsoever.
It was kind of done in Uncharted 4, right? So it's not
Mhm.
taking their learnings from that and applying it to this series. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's overdone in this. Whereas Uncharted 4, it was like hub, then a bit of linear, then a hub, then a bit of linear. Whereas
Mhm.
this, there's only really one big hub. The rest are like little ones. But it feels cool because like Seattle, from a distance, you got these skyscrapers and stuff, and it would feel really weird to ride into Seattle and just be like, now you're in a alleyway or something, you know.
Yeah.
But so what you do is you go in and there's just this massive hub stretching out, and all you've got to do is go to like 2 buildings, I think. But there's a lot of optional stuff dotted around, isn't there? Like there's the whole bank where you can go and get a shotgun from the vault, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. And there's little side stories there as well. Did you go to the pet shop? At the top of the map, there's like a little restaurant, and if you go into the toilet there, there's an infected that jumps out of the stall into
Oh
you.
yeah, no, I went in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's a little key on the wall that says barcodes on it. And if you take that to the pet store, you can go in there, and there's like another little sub story in there.
Oh yeah, I think I did go there because I remember the jump scare. I remember the key. I don't think like I said, I've been too scared to really pay attention to much of what else is going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed going around that. I wasn't expecting it to be anything like that in The Last of Us Part 2. I was expecting it to be pretty much the same as the first game in terms of linearity and stuff. So when you kept going to new places and then you kept marking it on your map to discover somewhere else, or you'd find a piece of story that would lead you to another shop or would lead you to another one, I was like, oh, this is very new.
Yeah, it feels really cool as well. Like there's, even if you go up to like the broken highway, there's a fire engine, and you can use the hose to like rappel down and swing to another area, and then you find another story that leads on to another story, and it feels like you're actually exploring and discovering things. And with it all being optional, I think it just adds to the overall believability of the world.
Yeah, because nothing is a set piece. It's all down to you to find it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So the enemies in The Last of Us Part 2 all seem to have names, which isn't something that was in the first game, and isn't something that's in quite a lot of games, I don't think, is like in any. All the enemies call out to one another and use their first names. They're not like just calling out at random people. They're calling out at their friends or their family, and it feels real.
Yeah, I mean, even when they're not being killed, they like coordinate with those names, don't they? They'll be like,
Mhm.
Jason, check that room, or whatever.
Your American accent is just getting better and
It's
better.
just on point, isn't it? But
Yeah.
like, yeah. So Jason's checking the room, and then you'll blow Jason's head off, and they'll be like, Jason! It's like, what did I do? I just murdered Jason.
Yeah, you murdered Jason.
Not many games make you feel that. And then you see Jason, and Jason's like half his face is missing.
Oh,
And the blood pouring out. The gore's just so ridiculous, isn't it?
the gore is horrific. You can see chunks of body lying around. Like I blew someone's leg off yesterday, and I didn't mean to. It was just so much. Just the enemies don't feel like just NPCs. I know they are NPCs, but they're not in the same sense. Like just nameless goons.
No, they're not drones, are they?
No. They all have someone who knows them and is connected to them.
Yeah, there was one point later on where I shot an explosive arrow at someone, and it blew them into chunks, literally chunks. And there was a bit of them stuck to the ceiling, and it was dripping down. And
That's so rank.
someone called out their name, and it's like you couldn't even recognise them anymore. They were just bits of meat.
Ah.
And it does make you feel, it's grim, but it does make you feel like a bastard.
Yeah.
But I think there's another point to it as well, is obviously this is a story about cycles of violence and revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the enemies are named to remind you that they're leaving loved ones behind, and any of those loved ones could be, someone who comes after you in The Last of Us Part 3, or...
Yeah, The Last of Us Part 3 could be Jason's sister.
Yeah,
For
it's
example.
Jason's ghost haunting you.
Yeah, because all those people that were killed in the first one all had names and all have connections, and now it's coming to like a full circle and
Yeah.
seeing them in action.
It's not The Last of Us 2, it's The Last of Us Part 2 for a reason, because this is a game that deals with the fallout of the original game. Whereas most sequels are just like, here's another story in the same universe. This is like, what would be the fallout of everything that happened during the course of that game? Even like little things, like things characters say, have a fallout in this. And I think it does a great job of tying it all together coherently, even with mechanics and story.
The characters feel so much more like realised and full, and you can kind of feel that all of the enemies you come across all have a similar connection to one another, like Ellie does with everyone else at Jackson. You can kind of place any of those characters as Ellie, and you can understand their pain and their sorrow, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into spoilers, but even later on in the game, you get to see different sides of certain factions in the game, and you see that from their perspective, they're not evil. You know, they're just humans trying to do their best in this awful world. And Jason is actually a good dude. He just likes his petting his dogs, and not people not murdering his dogs. You know, he wants a simple life. Speaking of which, dogs.
No.
Dogs are new.
Dogs are new. Dogs are new, and they are sad. They make me sad.
That brings us on to our next point then. Canines, or dogs, as humans call them.
Yeah, normal humans tend to call them dogs. Yeah, there are dogs in this now who can sniff you out, and they can bring enemies to you, but you can distract them with throwing bottles and bricks away and distracting their scent and stuff. But they are smart, and they are on the ball, and they know exactly where you are pretty much all the time. And I don't want to ever kill any of them, but I have.
I think dogs are a really smart addition because they're not overused. They're only in certain sections of the game. So, like I said, stealth's more dynamic, and you can come out of stealth and then re-engage stealth quite easily in this. And I think the dogs are there to keep you on your toes, right? Because, like you said, they can track you down by scent. So you've got to keep moving when there's a dog on your ass. If you don't have a brick to distract him or a bottle to smash a window or whatever, then you've just got to keep forward momentum.
Yeah.
And obviously that can snowball into you making more mistakes if you stumble into an enemy or whatever.
No, that happened to me quite a lot. Like I went through a door as an enemy was coming through a door, but I was trying to get away from the dog, so I wasn't even paying attention to the humans, and it just went horribly wrong from there.
Can I just say as well, what Naughty Dog are bastards, because one of the first things you do in this game is stroke a dog. Like when you're in Jackson, there's a dog, and it's like press triangle to stroke, and you're like, I'm going to be murdering so many of your family later.
No, don't say it like that. That makes it even worse. Oh God. I was expecting to be able to avoid them a lot better than I have done, but I'm rubbish at avoiding them.
Have you killed a dog's handler before the dog yet? If you put an arrow through the handler's head while the dog's oblivious to you, and you're still in stealth, the dog just whimpers and paws at its handler's corpse.
No! Oh God, this game.
Yeah, it's so brutal, and obviously if a dog gets to you, you've got to stab it, and it's pretty awful. I think from like a gameplay perspective, they do add to the game, and I can see why they added them, and not just to make you feel awful, but that as well.
I wish they hadn't added them. I can see why they have, but I wish they hadn't. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. It makes me so sad. I hate it when they're like, go on Fido, go find her, and it's like, yeah Fido, you do your best job, and then you're like, actually no, you're coming to find me, I need to kill you or avoid you.
You know what's good for dogs, don't you?
What?
Mines.
Oh no, I don't want to blow a dog up.
If you just put a mine where you've been, then the dog will keep sniffing along until it gets to the mine, and then it turns into dog food, basically.
Oh, that is just brutal, absolutely brutal. I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it. So this leads us into our 7th and final point, which is 3-way conflicts between you and enemies. This was kind of touched upon in Left Behind, which was the DLC for the first game, but it wasn't explored at all in the first game. And it makes you feel like you're a small part of a much bigger conflict going on.
Yeah, it does. It makes the world feel bigger than you are, like much of the points we've touched upon do. At one point, you're in an underground station and you're being hunted by enemies, I won't say who, but there's clickers everywhere, and you can either just sneak past all of it and just ignore them all, but obviously the clickers are drawn to sound, so if you throw a brick or alert the enemies and let them start firing, the clickers just swarm them, and you can just watch it play out. You can bypass the conflict while they're attacking each other, or you can join in and just start smashing heads. And I think it does add a lot to the game, because it felt weird in the original that you never saw clickers and humans at the same time.
It doesn't ever make you feel too overwhelmed because, like you said, you can use one to your advantage and you can actually help yourself in those situations thanks to bricks and bottles and stuff. It's actually quite fun using the clickers and the other infected against human enemies and watching them get got.
It is good. It's not overused either, so it's not like you can just bypass every encounter by drawing the clickers in or whatever. It's just specific moments you can do it in, and feels like little set pieces, and they're really cool. And then later on as well, you end up embroiled in three-way human conflict. Sorry, you've got two sides fighting it out, and you're just in the middle of it, and you just on your belly, tense as bullets fly over your head with two sides fighting, and it's so cool. It feels great, and you can just like pick away at the edges of the conflict as well. So you can just be a knife in the dark, pulling stragglers and pulling them into bushes and stabbing them, or you can just get involved and mix things up, and it feels great, and it looks amazing, and I love it.
Yeah, it makes combat a lot more interesting. The Last of Us had all that desolation and all the buildings being destroyed and stuff, and this one, part 2, still has the same destruction of buildings, and obviously it's a lot worse than the first one, but this one feels like you're not on your own, and the people that you encounter aren't just randomly there. They're there for a reason.
No, I totally get your point there, and I think this does a good job of contrasting that as well, because there are them moments of loneliness still, and there's bits where you're just wandering around a desolate landscape and listening to the wind or picking through ruined buildings, and then the next minute you're in this like action sequence, and it's really cool to have that contrast there, because I think those moments of brutality, of violence, excessiveness feel a lot more distinct when they're backed against those moments of quiet.
Thank you, Kirk, for joining me on talking through 7 improvements in The Last of Us Part 2. If you enjoyed today's video, please do like it and subscribe to VG247 for more spicy video game takes, and also lots more The Last of Us Part 2 content, because we're going to be covering it quite a bit on the channel. And make sure you also check out VG247.com for even more goodness. Thanks, Kirk. Bye.
Bye.